federal government is working to give rural Americans a resource that many of us take for granted: high-speed internet. Just 3% of people in urban areas lack access to broadband, but in rural areas, 35% of people have no access at all. That accounts for about 22 million Americans. The FCC yesterday committed $2 billion in subsidies over the next decade to help telecom companies bridge that gap. Tony Dokoupil visited Dawsonville, Georgia, about 40 miles outside Atlanta, to see the costs of this digital divide. Tony, good morning.
Good morning. The internet is not a luxury. In fact, last year, a federal court defined it as a basic utility like running water or electricity. But for millions of rural Americans, high-speed internet ends before their county line.
You place your chin right up there, please. Your head all the way forward.
At this optometry office in northern Georgia,
Perfect. Very good.
Dr. Brian Burke takes pride in his sleek 21st century technology.
I wanted to be the most modern office that we could be.
But he has to run it at a 20th century pace. When you say it feels like the 90s here, you're serious?
It does. People can remember back to when you would do your dial-up and you would wait for the, for it to spin around until you actually got a connection. We face that as a daily part of doing business.
The FCC defines high-speed internet as download speeds of 25 megabits a second. Dr. Burke's internet is half that speed or less. Why couldn't you just call your internet service provider and say, hey, I need faster internet?
We have tried that. It's not been successful. So this is our server.
Burke says he's spent more than $25,000 on a server to avoid transferring large files online.
So this server is a replacement for high-speed internet?
That is correct.
But slowdowns at the front desk still prevent at least 20 patients a week from getting in for treatment. The internet is a physical thing.
Yes, this is it. This is the internet. This is the place where networks actually connect to each other.
Andrew Blum, the author of a book about the guts of the internet, took us to a tightly guarded room in New York to see one of the hubs that connects broadband users here with high-speed networks elsewhere.
Bandwidth in this room is cheaper and more abundant than almost anywhere else on Earth. The challenge is connecting where we are right now to the rest of the country.
Rural homes and businesses are far from these hubs and often far from each other in areas where fiber optic cable can cost up to $40,000 per mile. Slow speeds can make downloading songs take up to 16 times longer. A movie that takes fewer than 8 minutes to download elsewhere can sometimes take up to an hour and a half.
We are working as hard and as fast as we can to get as close to the customers as we can.
Jared Berkshire runs Georgia operations for Windstream, one of rural America's largest internet providers. He brought us to a home where one of his technicians was installing broadband. Why can't you bring high-speed internet to everybody in the countryside?
Well, it's a challenge of economics, if you will, trying to get further out into the rural network with the density being more and more spread out, population being more and more spread out. It's a challenge no matter what provider you are.
In the meantime, working from home is a challenge for folks like Tom Havermalls, who logs on instead at a nearby lunch spot.
I live about a mile up the road north, and up that way they do not have it. They have some faster internet down this way, it just has not made it a mile away.
Oh, we hear about it all the time. It's one of our most pressing issues.
Congressman Doug Collins is trying to encourage competition to connect that last mile. He introduced a bill to offer tax incentives for companies to improve their connections.
Many people are locked into monopolistic situations in which it just really doesn't get better.
But telecom crews say they're working to make things better, line by line, mile by country mile. Your message to rural customers is patience.
Patience, yeah. We're going to get there.
And President Trump says he'd like the expansion of rural internet to be part of his trillion-dollar infrastructure overhaul, but no details yet on how that would work. What's amazing about this story is it's a reminder that the internet, for all the magic, is a physical thing. If you don't build the cables, you don't put them in the ground, it doesn't work.
Everybody thinks wireless, but you have to wire things.
Yeah.
You have to build.
One of the things that I've heard as justification in years past is that by the time you build out that infrastructure, the technology will already be a generation ahead. So you'll always be playing catch up, essentially.
That's not the case anymore. If every home had a fiber optic cable going to it like it has a water line, everybody would have fast speeds.
Great reporting, Tony. Thank you very much.